Hello, BookTube. I'm continuing my double review day with reviews of Everything Trump Touches Dies by Rick Wilson and its follow-up, Running Against the Devil, also by Rick Wilson. So hopefully this will do the thumbnail, so I don't have to hold these for the whole review, because quite frankly, holding these books up can get tiresome after a while. So hopefully that worked. Over the past few weeks, I read Everything Trump Touches Dies and Running Against the Devil. So I mean, they're both very engrossing, very fun books to read. Rick Wilson has I guess you could say a kick-ass wit. He's just like pulls no punches, and a very biting sense of humor. So basically, with Everything Trump Touches Dies, Wilson focuses on basically mostly Republican politicians who or in his own profession, the sort of political consulting class, in their relationship with Trump, and how Trump basically sort of ruined a good chunk of their careers. Either ruined them, seeing them in prison, or basically exiling them into the proverbial wilderness. And then he also has bits on how Democrats should respond, should try to, like, what tactics they should use to win the 2018 midterms and eventually the 2020 presidential. So, I mean, it's all very fun, and he pulls no punches, very sort of biting, sarcastic criticisms of a lot of the people who have, attached themselves to Trump's coattails. I mean, there are some criticisms, I think, of the book. In each section, there's this sort of fantastical little prologue that kind of forms a story. So in part one, let me go to the contents. It's like part one is like the road to the shit show, what to expect when you're working for Trump. And it basically takes, you're a mid-level cabinet secretary, or you're like a mid-level in some department or other that Trump doesn't particularly care about, that entitles you to go to cabinet meetings, but I don't necessarily think the person is like secretary level. And it basically like starts off with the person being really enthusiastic and wanting to start cutting stuff and imposing their ideology on the department, and then gradually getting whittled down to the point where Trump fires them by text or by Twitter. And then part two, Victims of the Curse, takes it, the person is works in the White House, and again ends up with that person being fired after Trump really liking them. And yeah. And to a certain extent, it is kind of very fun, somewhat, and also at the same time, if you really need, like, does it really add anything to the actual text itself? So, yeah. I mean, it's great fun. And definitely, I highly recommend it, although, yeah, I mean, there are some caveats. to this, he probably could have, even though maybe not quite in Wilson's wheelhouse, working on or like adding information, the stories of people outside of politics and the consulting class who've been burnt by Trump over the decades, or yeah, over several decades. Anyway, that was fun. And then Running Against the Devil, which the first part largely rehashes everything Trump touches dies, and then goes into how Trump, like what resources Trump has to win the 2020 election, what Democrats can do to help him win the 2020 election, and what Democrats can do to win the 2020 election for themselves. And generally his argument is one of supporting the moderates. Or at least once the Democratic primary is over, race to the middle, not really do the whole policy wonk exercise, be optimistic while at the same time continually hammering on Trump, his failures, his just go after him and make the 2020 election a referendum on Trump himself. And it is, again, a very, very interesting read, although I find myself as somebody who I consider myself a fairly more on the left side of the Democratic Party, that I did not find myself necessarily being upset by Rick Wilson's recommendations. And I think that was kind of curious. Although I think certainly something more for me than maybe a lot of other readers. But I do, to a certain extent, think that, yeah, maybe Rick Wilson isn't far off the mark on some of his recommendations. Although I do kind of wish he had talked about how the difference between the Democratic primary and how to win that, and then transition to being a successful general election candidate. So anyway, but again, very, very enjoyable. Very much the same structure of Everything Trump Touches Dies. And some of those like little fantasy stories are hilarious. Although not necessarily, it doesn't quite show it in the thing, but what was it? I want to say it was How to Lose, that actually had this story where the person is, I'm assuming, a different White House official, aide, who, like, Trump loses in this scenario, and they basically, him and several other sort of villains of the Trump administration sort of lose it, and yeah, basically a coup of comedic proportions. So yeah, but definitely highly recommended. So that concludes my double review, well, my 2 review videos. So I will have something up tomorrow, probably a tag. I don't know if it'll be one of the Alphabet Soup tags or if it will be another tag, but hopefully I will have a tag up tomorrow. It might be up a little bit late because I have a rather annoying appointment in the morning. So Until then, BookTube, have a great day.